Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. We start our video with a story in which a certain posh lady wants to complain to the supervisor about our OP, but the supervisor turns out to be the OP's brother. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Incompetent because I'm not from here? Sure, I'll call my supervisor. When my brother and I were in our early 20s, we worked at the same small theater in a rather posh area of West London. It was a lovely little place with small productions and was visited by some pretty cool people, but occasionally you get someone to visit who thought a little more highly of themselves than others. You know the type who treat service people as lowly trash, and it's okay because they're so important. It wasn't often, but we'd have a few people visit once in a while. Now, me and my brother are not from this posh part of London. Actually, we're born and raised in the East Side, purebred apples and pears Cockney, with a bit of grime thrown in. But speaking to us, you'd never really guess that because we're pretty good at adjusting our accents for our workplace, which is important for later. Also, no one knew we were related unless they worked with us. Most of our co-workers were from more affluent areas and sounded so. They were all awesome. We had great banter. Anyway, I was a barista at the time, and one of the rules was if it was cutting close to the start of a show, you weren't allowed to put certain food orders through because they wouldn't be ready in time. And if the customer wasn't seated by the time the show started, they'd have to wait until the interval for entry. Most people understood. Some people just thought we were lying and didn't want to take their order. I don't know what possible reason they thought I would want to lie about that. So one day, Lady McSnark comes up and demands one of said food orders, and I politely explain the above scenario, point her to the foods that are able to be ordered, and ask if I could interest her in one of those. I guess somewhere along the line my accent slipped up. It just does, I'm not ashamed of it, but it can be hard to mask. I drop the occasional T now and then, and her face just turned. It was a pure twist of disgust, and her voice changed. I could almost feel the disdain pouring out of her mouth. Oh, of course you're incompetent. You're not from here. I want to speak to your supervisor. I want to make a complaint about your service skills. I was pretty taken aback, but not surprised. We've both had this a lot. I asked her if she was sure she wanted to speak to my supervisor. She assured me she absolutely was. I was happy to comply. So I called my supervisor over. My supervisor was my brother at that time because he's awesome. He asked Lady McSnark what the problem was, and she proceeded to insult me personally about my poor service skills being the result of my social background and how I didn't belong there having come from that place. Putting on his best Cockney accent, he replied, asking her if she wanted to continue personally insulting me, his sister, and co-worker, or if she would like to pipe down and continue taking her order with him, who reiterated the same menu rules. I've never seen someone gasp in such a dramatic way. It was wonderful. She did shut up and place her order. And our second story. Rude woman gets what she deserves. So I just found this subreddit today and had to share my favorite revenge story. I'm a super nice, well-mannered guy. I typically never snap on anyone or get in fights with others, but once in a while I just can't help myself. I was flying out to Denver to visit my family for Thanksgiving this past year. Everything's going fine. I'm on an aisle seat, life is great. 3 minutes after takeoff, I decide to recline my seat. Now, keep in mind the pilot hasn't taken the fasten seatbelt light off yet and told us we could do so, but I figure, hey, no one will say anything if I do this right. I know what I'm doing. You don't just slam the seat back. That stuff's for amateurs and hyperactive children. Every decent human being knows you push the button on the armrest and gently recline the seat ever so slightly so as to say, hey, neighbor behind me, this is coming back. You hold for at least 10 seconds, then start to slowly recline the whole way. I did this. I'm an expert traveler. Now I'm relaxed. I'm ready to nap and enjoy my time off work when suddenly my seat gets shoved hard and again and again and again until I turn around to see the culprit. It's a woman in her late 20s. She was pretty, clean, and had a total bee face. You know the type. Everything they say and do looks rude. So I'm like, "Excuse me, is there a problem?" And she says, "You're not supposed to do that yet." And I say, "Why not?" At this point, I know I'm technically in the wrong here, but I figure playing stupid can't hurt. However, she replies, "The pilot tells you when you can recline your seat. Have you never flown before?" In a super bitchy and argumentative tone, I retort, "Are you going to go tell the teacher?" before she can even respond. Bing! This is your captain speaking. We're now at cruising altitude, and you can go ahead and recline your seat and move about the cabin. Clearly, this debate is over. I turn forward, and we're done with it. As I'm getting off the plane, I make a point to move as slow as possible since she'll be getting out after me. I help anyone and everyone I can with their bags because I can tell she's in a hurry to get away from me. I'm basically being as nice as possible to others, completely out of spite for this rude bee. She finally storms past me as we exit the plane and head to baggage claim. She darts a couple of mean scowls in my direction at baggage check too. I meet my parents at arrivals, and I'm off. End of story. Or so I thought. Return flight? I really thought I was effed. I was running late for my flight and was the last one to board. I get to my seat, and who am I sitting directly behind? That effing bee. Damn it, surely she'll make my life hell. We make eye contact. Things feel pretty awkward in this moment, but she just couldn't resist. There's an old man in front of her who's at least 80 that has his seat already reclined. We haven't even left the gate. And just like before, instead of saying something to the man, she just starts pushing his seat until he felt compelled to say something. He says in his sweet little old man voice, "Excuse me, if you could try not to do that, I have back problems." She battles him on the issue. He asks kindly for her to let him recline his seat for his bad back one more time. She calls over the flight attendant. The flight attendant's in a weird situation here. Technically, the lady is right, but she's obviously being a bee. Everyone in the situation is struggling to find a solution when suddenly I knew exactly what to do. I stand up and say, "Excuse me, he can switch seats with me." I turn to the family sitting behind me. "Would you mind if he reclined his seat back?" I say this very loudly so I can draw as many people into this conversation as possible. Everyone needs to know how big of a bee this chick is. The mother directly behind me says, "Oh no, that's not a problem at all." The old man thanks me, the flight attendant thanks me, and now I'm exactly where I wanted to be. The power position. I take my seat in front of this C and shoot her a look as I sit down. She's not happy about this situation at all by the look on her face. The plane leaves the gate and hits the runway. Now, as soon as we hit the runway, I press the recline button. I don't push it back, though. No, I let gravity take care of that. I just sit there and wait. The plane starts to move, and then he hits the jets. My seat goes flying back. I hear my seat hit her iPad, and it falls into the aisle. The woman is instantly infuriated and starts pushing on my seat. I put my headphones on. She pushes the flight attendant button, obviously to tattle on me, but the flight attendant doesn't get up during takeoff, and we all know it. The attendant never shows up. Not until after the captain has allowed us to recline our seats anyway. I suffered through 5 minutes of seat kicking for this moment. I'm not going to F this one up. The lady tells the attendant that I lowered my seat. The attendant says he's allowed to have his seat back now, though. I can't tell him to put it up. If you keep making issues for other passengers, I'm going to have to move you. The flight attendant doesn't even entertain an opportunity to let this woman reply and just leaves at the end of her sentence. It was honestly rude of the attendant, but we all know that Thunder S deserved it. When the drink cart comes around, the attendant offers me a drink on the house. I ordered a scotch and say, "Wow, that's so nice of you," and turn around to give one final look at my victim as I make a cheers gesture to those behind me. I hope your Thanksgiving sucked, B. You got bested. And our next story. Are you poor? This happened a few years ago when my wife and I lived in a less-than-ideal apartment in a less-than-ideal neighborhood. A guy in the building, we'll call Matt, started out nice, but got to be so bad he was one of the reasons we couldn't wait to get out of there. He was on disability, didn't work, hadn't in decades from what he told me, mostly used a motorized scooter to get around, and had little dogs that we didn't mind because he got along with our puppy. The first few requests started innocently enough. Asked if we could grab him a loaf of bread from the store. He always repaid me afterwards. Stopped when he got mad I bought him the wrong loaf and refused to pay me back. Asked if we could feed his dog while he went to visit family, first for a day, then started asking for weekends. Stopped when it became frequent and longer intervals, despite his sob stories and "guess I'll have to cancel my family" responses. Asked if I could accompany him to the hospital so I could drive his scooter home. That was an automatic no. But the one that put me over the edge and made me cut all contact was so over the top, I just couldn't. He knew I had a decent job and could live in a better apartment than the building we lived in, and I guess he was having a harder month than usual. So he saw me in the hall one day and our conversation was pretty close to this. "Matt, are you poor?" Me. "Excuse me? No." Matt, "So you'll lend me $20? Me. "No. I gotta go." Turned around and left after that. Wife and I moved out a few months later. We drive by every now and then, but don't see him and can't imagine he's left the place. Wow, that's impressive. Some people just assume they're owed money by the rich among us. And our last story. A lawyer and his fence. A coworker told me this story a few years ago. This happened in early 2000. So we work as electricians. Once he had something to do at a lawyer's house. You can imagine a big house and a lot of property. Everything was really nice. Only on one side there was a mound of earth, a long pile of dirt all the way to the property line. He asked said lawyer about it, and he told him that he hated that neighbor and had a 10-foot, 3-meter fence. Well, the neighbor hated him as well and had him tear down the fence since the community regulations only allowed 6.5 feet, 2-meter fences. Since he was a lawyer and a mad lad, he read the regulations, bought a lot of dirt, built this 6.5-foot, 2-meter pile of dirt, and installed a 6.5-foot, 2-meter fence exactly as the regulations required. That's what happens if a petty lawyer hates you. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.